Welcome to today's webinar, Mental Health and Resilience Through Difficult Times. So my name is Jennifer Flax, and I will be presenting this topic today. But before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit about my background. I'm an exercise physiologist on the health engagement team for GEHA, and I've worked in the space of health and wellness for about 24 years, wearing several different hats, everywhere from a personal trainer to a coach, a worksite wellbeing coordinator, to a fitness and health center director, educator. And I've also had the pleasure of serving employees in various spaces such as the government sector, clinical, corporate, education, public, and preventative health spaces. And I must say, I absolutely love sharing my experience and my knowledge with folks like you to support you in living your best life. I'm also super passionate about lifestyle medicine, which basically uses evidence based lifestyle therapeutic approaches such as whole foods, exercise, sleep, stress management, alcohol moderation, and tobacco cessation, and other non drug modalities to prevent, treat, and oftentimes even reverse the lifestyle related chronic diseases that are all too prevalent in our world today. But my goal today is to equip you with some informative facts and relative information that really just serve to empower you on your own health and wellness journey. And with that said, let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at what we're going to cover today. So today we're going to take a look at what mental health is, the prevalence in the United States, causes of mental health conditions, the role that well-being plays in mental health. We're going to take a look at resilience and how to build your resilience to endure those difficult times that we notoriously face throughout life. All right, so I'd like to spend a little time here going over a few mental health terms and definitions because you're going to often hear these terms used interchangeably, yet they're not the same. So let's start with mental health. Mental health refers to the maintenance of successful mental activity, and it's described as our emotional, our psychological, and our social well being. And it affects how we think, it affects how we feel, and also how we act. It also helps determine how we handle stress and relate to other people and just make healthier choices in general. Now, mental health conditions are defined as those that disrupt our thinking, our feeling, our mood, our ability to relate to others, and our daily functioning. Whereas mental illness is the term that refers collectively to all diagnosable mental health disorders, and it includes several different conditions that vary in degree of severity, ranging from mild to moderate to severe. And finally, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, otherwise known as SAMHSA, describes the term behavioral health as the promotion of mental health, resilience, and well being, the treatment of mental and substance use disorder, and the support of those who experience and/or are in recovery from these conditions, along with their families and communities. Now let's talk a little bit about why mental health is important for our overall health. Now, mental and physical health are equally important components of our overall health, right? um, you know, Depression, what it does is it increases the risk for several types of physical health problems, particularly those long lasting conditions like diabetes and heart disease and stroke. And similarly, the presence of chronic conditions can also cause the risk for mental illnesses. So they're interrelated and they both affect each other and affect our overall health. I think it's also important to remember here that a person's mental health can change over time, and it really depends on several factors. But when the demands that are placed on a person exceed their resources and their coping abilities, that's when mental health could actually be impacted. For example, if someone's working long hours, they're also caring for a relative and maybe they're experiencing some economic hardships. This may actually cause poor mental health in a person because, as we just looked at, the demands are overwhelming. They're exceeding their resources, perhaps, and their coping abilities. All right, so let's take a look now at the prevalence of mental illnesses. Mental illnesses are among the most common health conditions in the United States, and so we're just going to take a moment to talk about those statistics. Now, according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, more than 50% of Americans will be diagnosed with a mental illness or disorder at some point in their lifetime. And 1 in 5 Americans will actually experience a mental illness in a given year. Also, they show that 1 in 5 children, either currently or at some point during their life, have had a seriously debilitating mental illness. And finally, according to the CDC, 1 in 25 Americans lives with a serious illness. Now, I do want to just quickly mention here that GEHA does provide telehealth benefit for our members with MD Live, and we will provide more information on that a little later in this presentation. All right, factors that actually contribute to mental illnesses. So there's actually no single cause for mental illness, but there are several factors that can contribute to the risk for mental illness. And these things include things such as early adverse life experiences, things such as trauma or a history of abuse, for example, child abuse or emotional abuse and neglect, sexual assault, witnessing violence. Those are some examples of early adverse life experiences. Also, experiences related to other ongoing chronic medical conditions, things such as cancer or even diabetes. Genetics, biological factors, or chemical imbalances in the brain are other factors that could contribute, as well as our environment, our surroundings, the use of alcohol or drugs. And then having feelings of loneliness or isolation, especially for long periods of time, can also contribute to mental illnesses. All right, so additional factors that can contribute also to mental illnesses occur when the brain or part of the brain is not functioning well, or perhaps it's working the wrong way. And so when the brain is not working properly, one or more of the 6 functions that you see on this slide will typically be disrupted. And that includes our thinking, our thoughts, our decisions, our cognition, all of our internal mental processes and functions, things like communicating and insight, planning, judgment, focusing, memory, those types of things. Perception is another function of the brain that can be inhibited. And perception is sensing, that it's that ability for us to be able to use our 5 senses to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, and to touch. Emotions, or our feelings, moods, or the ongoing inner feelings that we experience, can be impacted, or they can function improperly or not the right way. And so the ability to experience feelings and to express those feelings to others is important, but it can be impacted. Those feelings of being happy, of calm, peaceful, content, sad, depressed, angry, anxious, fearful, inadequate, lonely, all of those things when it comes to emotions. Also, signaling, another function of the brain. If this is disrupted, signaling is being responsive and reacting to the environment. And what happens is the brain registers danger and our sensory perception. So, our ears, our eyes, our nose, our taste, our touch. And so when those things plus our internal signals, such as our thoughts and emotions and our physical body, initiate, what that happens is they initiate a physiological cascade. And so when that signaling occurs, or if it's disrupted, we might experience an increase in heart rate, alertness, perception, and tension. And that's simply our body's way to prepare us for that flight or that flee for safety and protection. But again, that signaling process of our brain could be disrupted or not working well. Also physical, our movements, motor functions, those somatic experiences. Some examples of our physical functioning of the brain includes our respiratory rate, our circulatory system, our nervous system, our digestive system, and even our musculoskeletal system. So when we think of the physical function of the brain, those are the items that we think of. And then finally, one of the other functions, the 6th function of the brain, is behavior. And this includes functions like sitting and running and walking, talking, listening, working, joking, playing. those types of things. All right, so those are the functions of the brains. And again, when those things are not functioning well or they're working the wrong way, those can contribute to a mental illness. All right, so let's talk about symptoms. When the brain's not working well or the wrong way, some of the symptoms that might be noticed include, thinking difficulties or problems focusing our attention. It could also be symptoms like extreme emotional highs and lows, so being extremely moody back and forth. Sleep problems could also be a symptom. Issues with eating, that could be a symptom as well. But when these symptoms significantly disrupt a person's life, that's when a mental health condition or an illness can be diagnosed. Now, if you experience any of those symptoms of mental health and or illnesses and it's impacting your activities of daily living, your relationships or even your health, your work, it's really advised to take action to treat and prevent the progression that could further impede, your quality of life. So don't hesitate to call your doctor or a mental health professional and speak to them about what you're experiencing, especially if these symptoms are disruptive or, if you're having thoughts of suicide. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about resilience now. We've looked at mental health and what it is and how important it is for our overall health. We've looked at factors that may contribute to mental illness and potential symptoms. So let's shift gears and talk about resilience. Now, we all experience moments or events in our lives, right? Everything from everyday challenges to those traumatic events with more lasting impact, like the death of a loved one or a life-altering accident or even a serious illness. And each change that we encounter, it affects us differently and it affects us uniquely. But generally, people adapt well over time to life-changing and stressful situations. And this is thanks in part to resilience. Now, resilience is a skill and an ability that anyone can learn and develop. It's not just about coping or being tough or pushing through, but rather it's when looking at it holistically, it's an important mechanism in helping us maintain balance in our lives during those difficult and stressful periods, and it can help to protect us from the development of mental illness. But psychologists define resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. And so when those difficult situations strike us, you'll still experience those feelings like anger and grief and pain, but you're able to keep functioning both physically and psychologically, and you're able to positively respond to that adversity. Now, if you aren't as resilient as you'd like to be, the positive thing about this is you can learn and you can develop the skill to become more resilient. Building resilience is described really like building up a muscle. Increasing and improving it takes time and it takes intentionality, but it can empower you to withstand and learn from those difficult and traumatic experiences that you will inevitably go through. Now, resilience involves behaviors, thoughts, actions, and things that we can learn and develop. And the ability to learn resilience is one reason research has shown that resilience is ordinary. It's not extraordinary. When we have low resilience, though, even those small setbacks, they feel like disaster, and it takes a while for us to get back on our feet. But when our resilience is high, we're able to bounce back from those setbacks and then use that adversity as an opportunity to grow. Resilience really just lets you stay focused on your goals and what's important, and it allows you to move forward in life. All right, so we just looked at resilience, but let's pivot and look at how mental illness and mental health impact our overall well being. Now, to start, well being has several different interpretations, but it can be best summarized as the state of being happy, of being healthy, or being prosperous or being prosperous. And it's made up of various elements, and those elements are integrated together and they give us wholeness. Now, in life, our ultimate aim is to achieve the best version of ourselves, the one who's happy, who's healthy, who's whole and prosperous, right? But when one or more of our elements that you see here on the slide are out of balance, or they're weakened, or they're unhealthy, our well being declines. Now, obviously, today we're specifically focusing on the elements of mental and emotional well being. But again, they're all integrated together. So when usually one element is affected, it can cause challenges in some of the other areas as well. All right. So when it comes to resilience, well-being is what you're trying to achieve, while resilience is how you achieve it. So said another way, resilience is how you achieve well-being. All right, so well-being or resilience, as you can see on the slide, it consists of having goals and a purpose in life. It's about being able to bounce back. It's about stress management and emotional regulation. Resilience, it consists of health management, problem solving, change ready, and being resourcefulness. It also consists of having support networks and working in teams. Now, well being, on the other side, is that ability to stick with a healthy lifestyle. It's being confident and centered. It's having positive and constructive outlooks on things and on life. And it's having a state of happiness. It's a sense also of momentum towards your goals. The bottom line here, though, is resilience consists of crucial life skills that are needed to improve our well being. So now you're beginning to see how those two are related and how they impact the other. So how do we strengthen our resilience? That's the whole point of this, right? How do we strengthen it? Before though we take a look at how we can specifically strengthen our resilience, let's take a look at some key points about the brain, and then we'll answer that. Now, there's two locations within the brain that are involved with resilience pretty heavily. And resilient brains, what they do is they show higher activity levels in the left prefrontal cortex, which is a region of the brain that's known for its role in emotional responses and mood regulation and meaning making. And actually, Dr. Richard Davidson, who is a pioneering resilience researcher, he wrote in The Emotional Life of Your Brain that the amount of activation in the left prefrontal region of a resilient person can be 30 times that in someone who is not resilient. Now, these areas, too, they're connected with emotional intelligence and meaning making. But also, interestingly, further research found that it wasn't just the activity in the left prefrontal region that predicted resilience, but also the level of connectivity between the left prefrontal region and the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is the threat detection center of our brain, and it activates when we're in fight, flight, or that freeze response. But using MRI technology, Dr. Davidson found that the strength of this connection between the two determines how quickly people are able to bounce back from an upsetting experience. I think it's just absolutely fascinating. All right, so let's move on and look at neuroplasticity. Resilience is a neuroplastic response, and neuroplasticity is basically the ability for the brain to adapt or change over time, and it does so by creating new neurons and building new networks. Now, historically, scientists believe that the brain stopped growing after childhood, but research now shows that this is not so. We can continue to change our brains through new connections into the latter years of our life. So we can continue to build those new neural pathways in the brain, and including those that strengthen resilience. All right, now when it comes to the best time to build resilience, it's best really to develop it in advance. However, many of us seek to actually build resilience after we've experienced a trauma, and at this point, it's harder. It's harder to overcome those entrenched memories when we're going through it or after it. So, when building resilience in advance, what that does is it primes the brain to be less emotionally reactive to adversity and then hence promote a more calm and constructive response from that adversity. All right, let's talk about one more key point to build resilience within the brain, and that's small, frequent tasks. Now, small, frequent tasks are a more effective way of learning, and what they do is they create better retention. There's a quote by Robert Collier that really sums it up. And his quote is, "Success is the sum of small daily efforts repeated day in and day out." And this quote, I think, just does a great job of summing it up for how to build resilience. But every time we learn something new, we create a new connection within our brain as well. And so the more we practice and then utilize that new skill, the stronger this connection becomes in the brain. And hence it forms a habit. Now, when we utilize this new skill often, our ability to draw upon it becomes even faster. And this connection in our brain becomes more dominant and it decreases the strength of the other connections that are used less often, those old pathways. So, habits are, in essence, they're well traveled and frequently used pathways in our brain that have been developed from small, frequent tasks. All right, so those are some key points to build resilience about our brain and how it works. Now, I'd like to take a look give you a general idea of how the brain works and uh, 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 some of the best ways to strengthen our resilience. So, we're going to look at some actual strategies here. The first one that you see on the slide is just building connections. And prioritizing relationships. Now, building strong, positive relationships with loved ones and friends can provide you with that needed support in the good and the bad times. And connecting with somebody that's empathetic and understanding can really just remind you that you're not alone in the midst of the difficulty that you're going through. And so, really focus on finding a trustworthy and compassionate person or people who validate your feelings and who will support the skill of resilience here. The pain of traumatic events can lead some people to isolate themselves, but it's really important here to accept help and support from those who care about you to help build up your muscle of resilience. Consider joining a group. Some people find that being active in civic groups or faith-based communities or other, local organizations provides social support and it can really help you reclaim hope too. Research groups in your area though that could offer you support and that sense of purpose or joy when you need it. That can be extremely helpful. Learn from your experience. Think of how you cope with hardships in the past, and then remember the skills and strategies that helped you get through those difficult times. You might even try writing about past experiences in a journal to remind yourself of where you've been and then how to find those strengths to help guide you, through your future behavior. Remain hopeful and accept change. We can't change the past, but we can always look toward the future. So accepting and anticipating change can make it easier for you to really just adapt to those new challenges with less anxiety. Practicing mindfulness, mindful journaling, stress management, relaxation techniques such as yoga and meditation, guided imagery, deep breathing, body scans, prayer, all of these things can help restore hope and train the brain and the body. What else? Avoid negative outlets. It may be tempting to mask your pain with alcohol, drugs, other substances, but that's like putting a bandage on a deep wound. But focus instead on giving your body resources to manage stress, rather than seeking ways to eliminate the feelings of stress altogether. Be proactive and look for opportunities of self discovery. Although it can take time to recover from major setbacks and traumatic events or loss, know that's your situation. It can improve and if you work at it. If problems do seem too big to tackle, break them down into more manageable pieces and try to figure out what needs to be done, make a plan, and then take action. People often find that they've grown in some respect as a result of the struggle. Embrace healthy thoughts and keep things in perspective. And the last one you'll see on this slide is make every day meaningful. Do something every day that gives you a sense of accomplishment and purpose, and set goals to help you look toward the future with meaning. Now, on this slide, I do have some additional strategies that have been proven to build your resilience. So we're going to take a look at a few of those as well. The first one you'll see on here is storytelling. Stories convey values and emotions, and they can reveal the difference and similarities between people's experiences. And so those personal stories that involve sharing can be helpful to form bonds and also those supportive networks. So with reflection, this can really help to develop resilience here. Reframing the way we interpret and think about stressful situations determines our whether they're going to be positive or have a negative impact on us. We can choose to interpret situations, even uncomfortable and difficult or challenging ones, as opportunities for growth and learning. And doing this, what it does is it just enhances our ability to be more resilient and navigate difficulties more successfully. Visioning also, strengths and gift analysis. Knowing and using your strengths and your gifts, what that does is it allows you to work through challenges by using those personal resources and strengths and other positive capacities of psychological capital like hope and optimism and also self-efficacy. Practicing gratitude. Gratitude fosters adaptive coping mechanisms by basically managing positive emotions like satisfaction and happiness and pleasure and gratitude. And it enhances our emotional resilience and it builds our inner strength to really just combat stress. Silver lining, that's another really helpful one. Most situations, however difficult, present us with an opportunity, again, for learning and growth and development, or just the ability to put our skills to work in new ways. So, again, another very helpful strategy. And finally, the last one that you'll see on this slide is foster wellness and take care of yourself. Tend to your own needs and feelings. Participate doing that by participating in activities and hobbies that you enjoy. But include physical activity in your daily routine. Regular exercise can strengthen your body to adapt to stress and reduce that toll of the emotions like anxiety and depression, you know, play on your body. So try to get plenty of sleep, proper nutrition, and hydration also. And we're going to talk more in detail about our physical well-being on the next slide. So I'm not going to go into any more detail with that. And here it is. So, physical wellness. Physical wellness consists of recognizing that need for physical activity, for healthy food and sleep, as well as also providing or avoiding harmful habits, as well as preventing illnesses and injury or managing those chronic conditions that we have. But it's the foundational element and it supports a healthy brain and ability to build resilience. And that's why it's so important. So let's talk a little bit about exercise. Exercise promotes short-term and long-term brain health by preventing neurodegeneration, which a type of this neurodegeneration is a disease in which the cells of the central nervous system stop working or they die. And so what exercise does is it induces those beneficial responses in the brain, which is accompanied by an increase in what's called BDNF. BDNF is brain-derived neurotropic factor, and a tropic factor associated with cognitive improvement and the alleviation of depression and anxiety. So that's what that is associated with. Now, also, I want to say here with exercise, according to Dr. Ruth Peterson, who is the director of CDC's Division of Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity, if you could package physical activity into a pill, it would be the most effective drug on the market. And one final note on exercise that I want to just put out there, get outside whenever you can. Spending time outdoors, that's always good for our mental health. All right, let's talk a little bit more about nutrition. With nutrition, we're looking to maintain a balanced diet, including adequate hydration levels. It's better to consume foods and beverages that enhance good health rather than those that impair it. Now, an imbalanced diet that includes a high intake of sugar and fat and insufficient dietary fiber over a long time can actually cause disruption in the gut microbiome. And this affects the body and the brain in that respect. And also high consumptions of fat and sugar. These can produce actually potent levels of serotonin, which as we know, serotonin is a chemical messenger that's believed to act as a mood stabilizer. So when we have it in healthy doses, it helps produce those healthy sleeping patterns as well as boost our mood. But when it's produced in those potent levels, it has the opposite effect. So once again, balancing your diet and eating healthy, well-balanced meals can be extremely effective here. Sleep. Lack of sleep releases cortisol and it leads to being impulsive. And focus on, as far as that goes with sleep quality. It's more important than the quantity. It's really about the quality. But also, sleep and wake up around the same time every day. Just a little tip there to add to the sleep piece of it. Alcohol and drugs, moderate or eliminate those substances, things such as tobacco, drugs, alcohol. Those things really that negatively alter and weaken our physical wellness and our mental wellness as well. All right. Let's talk a little bit about seeking help. Now, as you know, human beings have a lot of capacity for resilience and building it, right? We looked at all the research behind it and how that works and how that strategies can make that possible. But it's important to know that it may not be unlimited. While resilience may not be unlimited, it is renewable. We also learned that becoming more resilient can take time and it can take practice. If you don't feel like you're making progress or you don't know where to even start, really consider talking to a mental health professional. With their guidance, you can improve your resiliency and also your mental well-being overall. A licensed mental health professional can really help you develop that plan to move forward. It's also important to get professional help if you feel like you're just unable to function as well as you'd like to, or if you're struggling with those basic activities of daily living as a result of trauma or other stressful life experiences. But becoming more resilient, it not only helps you get through difficult circumstances, it empowers you to grow and even improve your life along the way. So before we close, I would like to say a little bit more about hope. Hope is a positive anticipation, or it's to cherish a desire with anticipation, right? And so looking forward to something, what this does is it changes our brain chemistry. It also lifts our mood and our well being, and it gives us a sense of control because we're creating that positive future. And hope can even really just be looking forward to small moments of things like pause, of stillness, and even just breathing. Wendy Lynch, who has her PhD and she's also an author, she gives us a really good example about giving yourself an invitation and then giving yourself permission to show up. But she talks about how she invites herself for some uninterrupted time to just sit in her favorite chair and drink her favorite cup of tea next to a sunny window, and she also listens to soft music. She gives herself permission to do so. And to be honest with you, I love this example so much that I've started to give myself these invitations for small moments just like that. And my hope really is that you will too. So, we always like to leave you with some resources to tap into and utilize to improve your health and well being. And so, I just want to say here that GEHA offers a plethora of resources for the general public and members regarding behavioral health. And on this slide, you're going to find a list of these resources and links to learn more. Now, all GEHA medical plans include free telehealth with MD Live, and that includes several behavioral health services, including substance use disorder counseling. And you can learn more about that at geha.com/MD Live. And as always, customer service or customer care is there to help answer your questions too. And that number is 800-821-6136. And GEHA's website has all this benefit information and more. So don't hesitate to visit GEHA to explore. And don't forget about your agency's employee assistance program. They are full of supportive and helpful resources also. Now, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, is also up here on this slide. And their distress helpline at 800-985-5990 is up there, as well as their text situation with Talk With Us. And you can talk with them via text by texting 66746. And finally, call your healthcare provider if stress or anxiety gets in the way of your daily activities for several days in a row. Your health is obviously extremely important to all of us. And that concludes today's webinar on mental health and resilience. In summary, we looked at what mental health was, the prevalence in the United States, some of the causes of mental health conditions, the role that well-being plays in mental health, resilience, and also how to build your resilience to endure those difficult times. And we hope that you're able to just really take a couple of nuggets of information with you and apply it to your well-being for a richer life. Thank you for spending time with us today. I am going to leave this slide up for just a little bit and direct your attention to the question piece. If you have any questions that come up that you think about after the fact, you are more than welcome to get a hold of us at wellnesswebinars@geha.com. Again, if any questions, comments, concerns come up after the fact that you have listened in and viewed this webinar, don't hesitate to reach out to us at wellnesswebinars@geha.com. Thank you very much for your time and attendance. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.